What is going on, everybody? What is going on? The Catch fam, my name is John Dawson, and in today's video, we will be hopping into a 10-team full PPR mock draft for the 2023 fantasy football season. It is mock draft season here in the month of August. So, what I do every year in the month of August is, as long as you guys are subscribed to the channel, which you can hit that subscribe button on the way in. If you're not, I am taking any mock draft requests: 8 teams, 14 teams, half PPR, full PPR, 3 wide receivers, super flex, whatever it is. Let me know in the comments down below, and I will get a mock draft put on the schedule and make a video just like this one where I give you round by round roster construction advice. So, like I said, hit that subscribe button on the way in if you guys are new. Hit the like button whether you guys are new or not. I really appreciate you guys doing that. And please, any comments, questions, concerns that you guys have pertaining to the 2023 fantasy football season, drop them down below. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And once again, please let me know if you guys have any mock draft requests. I would love to put together a mock for you. Without further ado, let's not waste any more time. Let's hop into today's mock draft. All right, so for the purpose of today's video, we are sitting at the 1.2. I just always set a random order whenever I throw together these mocks with the community. So, for me, the 1-2 full PPR format, you just have to go wide receiver right here with Jamar Chase on the board. It's a no-brainer. We're going to take him right there, move along. There's tempting players, Christian McCaffrey. You're super high on Bijan Robinson. I totally understand it. He's tempting. Great players like Tyreek Hill, Cooper Kupp, but Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase have to be the first 2 players off the board. Even, with Joe Burrow, the calf strain and everything, some, fantasy managers out there are a little bit worried about Jamar Chase, but I think he's going to be just fine. Obviously has the potential upside to finish as the wide receiver 1 on the season. Give me Chase all day long at the 1.2. It's not that complicated. Let's move along. All right, and let's just take a quick look at the roster format for the video. 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, 1 flex, kicker and defense because it is August, and 5 bench spots. So for me, our primary targets through the first 3 rounds, we're going to fill that wide receiver 1 spot and that wide receiver 2 spot. No question about it. And then we do need to go ahead and fill that RB1 spot as well. Kind of go with a hero running back approach, even if we're not taking that first running back extremely early in the draft. But the unique advantage in a 10-team draft, in my opinion, is you can really hammer out your running backs and wide receivers throughout your draft earlier in the draft, because in my opinion, you can get a very good quality quarterback, good quality tight end at a good value. There's just not as much of a need because there's less teams in this draft. It's not, in an 8-team draft where you need to go out and secure that positional advantage early because the rosters you're going up against are so completely stacked on a weekly basis. And while, the rosters are going to be more stacked in a 12 or 14 team league, you're at a good level to where, in my opinion, you can hold off a bit at quarterback and tight end. So moving along to the 2.9, we're just going to keep our eyes peeled for who's available. If Tony Pollard somehow falls out to the 2.9, I will take him over most of the available wide receivers because there are some wide receivers I really like here, but I think we're more likely to land a good value wide receiver at 3.2 as opposed to a good value running back. Don't get me wrong, Jonathan Taylor, Josh Jacobs will probably be available. And, if you're watching this video by the end of August, we may be having a different discussion about those players. But at this point in August, I'm going to hold off. I don't mind Derrick Henry right there, but I do really like Tony Pollard as an upside selection. So there goes T. Higgins. There are some really good wide receivers here. I do want to go over them quickly. Chris Olave and Devonta Smith, there's certainly a chance that either of those players fall to the 3.2, and I will take them all day long. I don't even mind going, Jamar Chase, Chris Olave right here, and then hoping that Devonta Smith falls to 3.2 or vice versa. But what I'm going to do here, and we'll talk about why, is I'm going to go Tony Pollard, take him off the board. That's our hero running back. Once again, I do not mind Derrick Henry right there whatsoever, but I believe that Pollard brings more upside to the table, and for that reason, I'm going to take him off the board. there goes Devonta Smith. I won't be surprised if Chris Olave is the next player off the board. If he's not, we're smashing the draft button at 3.2. But and he is available. So let's take Chris Olave. But let's say that, Chris Olave got selected at the 3.1. For me, I just take Calvin Ridley right there. He's a great upside selection. I absolutely love him. And for that, kind of security of knowing that Calvin Ridley would be there at the 3.2 or Chris Olave would be there at the 3.2, no matter what, I was happy to go ahead and take the running back that I have the most confidence in Tony Pollard in terms of bringing upside to the table. So there's our hero running back build. We're rolling with Tony Pollard, Jahmyr Gibbs off the board right there. I don't mind Jahmyr Gibbs in, that same kind of tier as well, but Pollard is the guy for me, simply put. So plenty of good value players we're going to see start to get selected off the board here as we move into the next tier. But, like I said, we had Calvin Ridley in our back pocket there, and that kind of allowed us to go out and get the player that we had the most confidence in Tony Pollard. Now, there is, a scenario there where maybe we go Devonta Smith, who, quite frankly, I like more than probably Chris Olave. What I was worried about is not being able to select the running back that I like the most in that tier, which was Tony Pollard. But nonetheless, Jamar Chase, Tony Pollard, Chris Olave, our first three selections as we move into the end of the third round. We see our first quarterback off the board in Patrick Mahomes. Calvin Ridley goes at the 3.6. I think that's pretty fair for a 10-team format. Couple of running backs. So far throughout this round, heavy at the running back position. Henry, Gibbs, Jacobs, Ramondre, and now Breece Hall as the third round wraps up. So looking ahead to the 4.9, 5.2, what I want to go ahead and do is fill in my flex spot with a wide receiver in a full PPR format. I want a wide receiver I have confidence in that flex spot. And then we'll kind of evaluate things. Do we want to take our first bench wide receiver? Because once again, in a full PPR format, I want that depth at the wide receiver position so that no matter what, in my wide receiver 1, 2, and flex spot, I have wide receivers that I have full confidence in. But we're going to take a look at what running backs are available there as well, because if there is a running back that I like enough, maybe, Kenneth Walker falls out to that point somehow. Maybe Travis Etienne, probably not. But if there's a player that, and there goes Kenneth Walker, yeah, not surprised at all. But if there's a player that I like enough there, we'll consider it, right? But I think for the most part, I'm probably going back-to-back wide receivers with these next two picks. Now, we talked about, quarterback value late in this draft, which is something we're going to be looking for. But at the moment, the way this particular draft is going, we still have Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts on the board. I would imagine they're going to be selected at any point, but if for whatever reason they are sitting there, there's just no way we can pass on that value and, still have any self-respect. So we're going to take, a good look at the quarterback position as well. As we move into that next tier, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Fields, Herbert, and even Trevor Lawrence. We're kind of going for the back end of that tier, seeing if we can land Justin Herbert or Trevor Lawrence at the 6.9, 7.2. And there goes Jalen Hurts. So, yeah, I'm going to imagine that Josh Allen goes in the next two picks. If he doesn't, then we just have to take Josh Allen. And then we'll take our flex wide receiver at 5.2. That kind of opens things up for those next two picks just being our next two running backs off the board. But there goes Josh Allen. No surprise. So let's take a look at who's available here. At this point in the draft, there goes DK Metcalf. I was about to say, I just feel like if Metcalf's there, you have to take him off the board. So there's a lot of interesting names. Deebo Samuel still available, Drake London, Christian Watson, Brandon Ayuk, and Christian Kirk, who I'm quite frankly not afraid to reach for whatsoever. So let's take Deebo off the board. I know Deebo doesn't feel great, but the spot that I like Deebo in the most is a flex spot, just straight up, because he still brings that upside to the table on a weekly basis. I love Ayuk. I'm a huge fan of Ayuk going into the year. I think he's a better overall value, but he's really starting to not go that much later than Deebo is. So you can kind of pick which one you would rather have. But like I said, Deebo's a flex option I am good with 100%. He still brings that upside to the table. And, he was hurt most of last year, so let's give him a little bit of a pass. But I'm going to reach for Christian Kirk here, and really the more and more mock drafts that I run, there's just no reason to not reach for Christian Kirk because you'll look in 12 team mocks, sometimes he's going at the end of the fourth. There are just too many fantasy managers out there who want a piece of this Jacksonville Jaguars offense, and I am one of them. Christian Kirk, at the end of the day, was your wide receiver 11 in full PPR last year. And don't get me wrong, I love Calvin Ridley, but Christian Kirk is going to be that security blanket type player for Trevor Lawrence. He's going to have a great year in full PPR formats, and I absolutely love him, as our first bench option, especially because, Debo's a player, like I said, I'm not absolutely in love with Debo, but I do recognize the upside, the great offense that he's in and the player that he is. So taking Christian Kirk, who I have a lot of confidence in, kind of gives us that flexibility, no pun intended, in the flex spot. Nonetheless, one other thing we could have gone with in terms of strategy there is, at the 4.9, we could have gone with a quarterback still, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Justin Fields, because we weren't ultimately too confident in the wide receiver selections. But I'm going to go ahead and knock out that wide receiver flex spot and take Debo there and then add my first bench wide receiver. In terms of running backs who are available, there's just no one that I really think was worth taking when we look at who could be available at the 6.9 and 7.2. The top available running backs who, none have been selected since we made our picks, but Alvin Kamara, Aaron Jones, Damian Pierce, Miles Sanders, and J.K. Dobbins. While I do think that is a good tier of running backs in terms of value, there's just no one there that really jumps out on paper. And when we look to the next following tier, Alexander Madison, DeAndre Swift, Cam Akers, James Conner, even Dalvin Cook, and then guys like Rashad White, David Montgomery, Isaiah Pacheco, there's not that much of a difference in those players in my mind than most of the players that we just mentioned. Don't get me wrong, you might get some, more stability out of maybe a Miles Sanders or Aaron Jones, maybe even Damian Pierce. But for me, I think it's okay to wait and, kind of target a DeAndre Swift and Rashad White. So I will say those are probably my next two targets, but we're still keeping a heavy eye on the quarterback position as well. At some point, we're going to get another run at the running back position. And the way the draft board is working out, I don't quite know that it's going to benefit us. But now, when we're looking at quarterbacks, kind of in that elite tier, which I do think is still important in a 10 team format, I think you can also get pretty good value later in the draft at the position, so it's kind of an odd balance. But Justin Fields just went off the board. So now we're just looking at Trevor Lawrence. So, I would imagine looking at the board, if he's going to go before our next pick, it's going to be right here at the 6.4 because all the other teams before us, except for the seventh overall team here who goes with Damian Pierce, has a quarterback. So, if we risk it and we don't go T-Law at 6.9 or 7.2, quite frankly, we're not going to end up with one of those top tier quarterbacks. So I'm going to go ahead and take Trevor Lawrence with this next pick. If we went back to back running backs with these next two picks, and we're just filtering in to that next overall tier, Dak Prescott, Deshaun Watson, and Tua. If you miss out on that tier, then you're really going into the late round quarterback game. And in my opinion, if you go that route, you need to take two quarterbacks, Geno Smith and Anthony Richardson, Kirk Cousins and Daniel Jones, Kyler Murray and Daniel Jones, Kyler Murray and Geno Smith, whatever it may be, some combination of the two. So, DeAndre Swift going there, I definitely want to go Trevor Lawrence because if you guys have watched any of my mock drafts, DeAndre Swift is one of my favorite RB2s that you can take on a regular basis. And now that he's gone, I'm just going to go ahead and take that elite quarterback, in my opinion, in Trevor Lawrence as we move in to the 7th round. And now for me, taking my RB2 might surprise some of you guys, but for me, it's Rashad White. I've been talking about him all off season long in terms of full PPR formats. Just a massive fan. There are other good names here. Alexander Madison, James Conner, even Cam Akers. You still got Dalvin Cook. But for me, I'm going to take Rashad White all day right there and move right along. Baker Mayfield as a starting quarterback in the NFL last year had the highest check down rate of any quarterback. Some people are worried about this offense, even the offensive line. How many trips are they going to have in terms of getting to the red zone? I'm not too worried about all that because Rashad White, 50 receptions in his rookie year, with not even being the primary running back for most of the season, with Leonard Fournette there, he's going to get around 80 targets and he is going to make the most of them. We're looking at him as a pure full PPR running back who brings that upside in the passing game. And, this offense is probably going to be playing from behind a lot of the times. I see a lot of checkdowns to Rashad White. I mean, I get that Tom Brady had a high checkdown rate as well. I get that Kyle Trask could win the starting quarterback position, but I think even if that happens, like, this offense is still going to be in a position where they're dumping it off to Rashad White. I'm just a huge fan of him having a potential breakout sophomore year. So I'll take him all day long right there. But moving along to the 8.9, I doubt David Montgomery will fall out to us, but he's absolutely my top target for this next selection. I also like Isaiah Pacheco, but I don't mind necessarily dropping into the next tier of running backs with guys like A.J. Dillon, Antonio Gibson, and Brian Robinson, then holding off for an additional round and looking at guys like Devon Shane, Damian Harris, and Jerick McKinnon. So let's take a look at a couple wide receivers who we could target with those next two selections. And there goes David Montgomery, who would have been a steal if he somehow fell to us anyways. But looking at wide receivers we can target, I don't think Mike Williams is going to last. So realistically, players like Jahan Dotson, Zay Flowers, who, depending on how many of these mocks you guys have watched me run, I will let you guys know you need to draft Zay Flowers when he's available if you want him, because his ADP is all over the place. It's skyrocketing. He is a player that fantasy managers are going bonkers for, and I'm a big fan of Zay Flowers, so I don't blame them. But just be aware he's not being drafted at his current ADP of 104 and a half. According to the Sleeper app, he is going much earlier than that. And the other guy I would say is in a very similar tier in terms of skyrocketing in ADP is Sky Moore. I mean, I could see Sky Moore going at any point in the 8th round, and this is a 10-man draft. So just be aware, if you want pieces of those two players who I think are great bench wide receivers, you're going to have to go out and get them when they are available. But I do think that third running back is the most important player for us to consider right here. So for me, if Isaiah Pacheco falls out to us, which is possible, these two teams right here both have 3 running backs. Mike Williams, a good pick there. There goes Cook. I don't mind that pick. But for me, I like Pacheco a lot as a RB3. I understand that his ceiling might not be crazy high, just the way that this offense is ran. And you still got Jerick McKinnon there. But I still think when you look at what Pacheco did the second half of the season and into the playoffs, into the Super Bowl, Pacheco will bring a lot of consistency at the position, and I'm ultimately not too worried about it. So I think he's a great kind of RB3. If you need to plug him in as your RB2 at points in the season, he's going to be somebody that you can rely on. So sitting here at the 9.2, there are a lot of good wide receivers, a lot of names you could consider: Mike Evans, George Pickens, Treylon Burks, some people maybe Kadarius Toney. There's a lot of good tight ends. You still got Darren Waller, Evan Ingram, Pat Fryermuth, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to draft Zay Flowers because I want him as one of my bench wide receivers. He has the potential to be the wide receiver 1 in Baltimore, even with Odell Beckham there and Rashad Bateman. And I'm not saying like those guys are just washed, injury prone wide receivers who aren't going to have an impact at all this season. I actually like Bateman, and I do like Odell to a point as well. But I think the most consistent player in terms of wide receivers for the Baltimore Ravens that we can take a shot on is going to be Zay Flowers. When you sit down and watch this guy's college tape, it's remarkable. He can do it all. I just think that Zay Flowers is going to have a good rookie season. And, when you look at the trend of rookie wide receivers in the NFL in the past couple years, you probably want to have one of these rookies on your draft board as a player you're targeting. And for me, it's just Zay Flowers. I do like Jordan Addison a lot. He's going a little bit earlier. He's in a great situation behind Justin Jefferson. He's going to be able to be open on a consistent basis because teams have to account for JJ. And then JSN, I really like JSN as well, but obviously he's going as the first rookie wide receiver off the board. Also in a good position where, opposing defenses have to account for both Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. And I do think that Quentin Johnston behind Mike Williams and Keenan Allen also in a position where he's going to be able to flash in certain weeks and make some big plays and an offense that's going to throw the ball a lot. So look at those 4 rookie wide receivers and consider making them, one of your bench wide receivers, whether you play in a 10, 12, whatever it may be, team league. Take a look at those guys because when you look at the trend, rookie wide receivers the past couple years, they become valuable fantasy assets sooner rather than later. All right, looking ahead to picks 10.9 and 11.2. We're sitting pretty good in terms of this roster, but we do need to get our starting tight end. So if Evan Engram or Pat Fryermuth fall out, we're smashing the draft button. Love both of those guys. David Njoku and Cole Kmet are perfectly fine options as well. And we probably do need to take our RB4 off the board, but there's a chance we can get a pretty good player at the 12.9 as well. So let's look at some wide receivers that we're going to at least want to have on our radar. At this point in the draft, yes, I will consider Cortland Sutton in full PPR formats. And the guy that we mentioned earlier, Sky Moore, I'm still considering him as well. So if we can land one of those 2 guys and our 4th running back or the tight end of our choice, we're going to do so. There goes Pat Fryermuth. There goes Evan Engram. So now I get a little bit worried at the tight end position. When we look across the board, don't get me wrong, every team, except for our team, has a tight end. But there are enough fantasy managers who will go out and draft a second tight end if they're the right value that I'm not going to risk it, especially knowing my community. And if they notice that I don't have a tight end on the board, which could happen in your draft, if someone notices that you're waiting on tight end, they might take advantage of that and draft a second tight end. But, teams who draft Darren Waller, teams who draft Kyle Pitts, teams who draft George Kittle, teams that have a tight end coming off of an injury or have a history of injuries, those are the teams that you need to watch out for, generally speaking. But nonetheless, I'm going to take Sky Moore off the board here because I think he's the best available player. And that wraps up our wide receiver room in high fashion. Jamar Chase, Chris Olave, Deebo Samuel, Christian Kirk, Zay Flowers, Sky Moore. Regardless of format, that would be a beautiful outcome at this point in the offseason going into the year. If we did go running back here at 11.2, for me, it's Damian Harris, Jamal Williams, or Jerick McKinnon. There are other names I like, Samaje Perine, even Rashad Penny. But to me, I think we go ahead and we take that tight end off the board just so it doesn't become an issue. Now, we could risk it, maybe for the purpose of this draft. You know what? Let's do it. Let's risk it just to see what happens, okay? And just to prove a point that it's probably not a good idea. And I do have a backup plan with one more tight end, those late tiers that I think we can take. But, let's just take our 4th running back. You could take a look at a lot of different options here. Damian Harris, Samaje Perine. I don't really mind. I'm going to go with Damian Harris. He's really become, when I'm looking in the late rounds at the running back position, the guy that I want to take a shot on because he's tied to that Buffalo Bills offense, which, don't get me wrong, didn't run the ball at a tremendous rate, the previous 2 years, but I've heard some rumors, that they are thinking about doing so between Damian Harris and James Cook. And I just feel like Harris, who is a good running back and has been fantasy relevant at least the last 2 seasons, although that he was hurt majority of last year, he is a good enough running back as a RB4 in redraft formats that he doesn't bring a high ceiling, but he should bring some consistency, especially being tied to a good offense that will take a lot of trips to the red zone. The question is, how often are they throwing it once they get to the red zone? And how often are they actually going to hand the football off? So there's a lot of guys you could argue for right there. Quite frankly, in a lot of mock drafts, I'm actually going Jerick McKinnon in that range. But if I've already drafted Isaiah Pacheco, I don't want to really double dip into that backfield. So we pass on McKinnon in this draft. And then I do like Jamal Williams because, you get that immediate value those first 3 games that Alvin Kamara is out. And, just feels like Jamal Williams could potentially have a touchdown vulture kind of role within that offense. Outside of that, Samaje Perine, a lot of you guys out there like him. I'm not against him. With Javonte coming off such a major injury, and you look at some of Sean Payton's past offenses, he does like to utilize those kind of pass catching running backs, and Pirine definitely brings that to the table. Some other good options: Elijah Mitchell, Tyler Algier, just pure handcuffs, probably two of the best handcuffs in the league because, both Mitchell and Algier are probably going to get touches even with Christian McCaffrey and Bijan Robinson healthy in their respective offenses. And God forbid anything happens to literally probably the two best running backs in fantasy football next year, those guys are going to be the next up right away. But nonetheless, we take Damian Harris. Let me know what you guys think about that tier, back end of the draft, late round running back tier, and what guys you prefer. Looking ahead to the 12.9, top targets: David Njoku or Cole Kmet. So, like I said, if we take the risk here, there's still a chance it doesn't pay off. But if it does, then, we secure the running back we have the most confidence in. Obviously, we see quite a few running backs off the board after Damian Harris. So, may have been a smart risk. Couple of picks here to find out. And let's just say Njoku and Kmet are taken off the board here. I don't mind Dalton Schultz, who has been productive, but I just worry about him with the Texans. I don't mind him, but the name that I really like, if you blank on tight end, if you punt the position, is Greg Dulcich. We just mentioned Sean Payton's offenses, what he likes to do historically. He loves the tight end position. So I will take Greg Dulcich all day long in this range as well. But here we are. You can kind of pick which player you like: David Njoku, Cole Kmet. I don't mind either player. Both of these offenses are going to be better than they were last year. The Bears are going to be a more efficient passing offense, and the Browns are going to pass the football way more than they did last year with Deshaun Watson having his full off season. So I'll take David Njoku here, but I really like Cole Kmet in these late tiers as well. And that wraps up our primary roster. We're just going to select our kicker and our defense, and then we're going to call it a day. We're actually in a position where we can either get a stud kicker or an elite defense. So however you want to do it, what we always recommend here at the channel is don't reach for kickers, don't reach for defenses in your drafts. Let them fall to you. Take the best value and don't worry about it because you can stream both positions throughout the season. But being that we're sitting here and no kickers have been taken off the board, I'm either going Justin Tucker or Daniel Carlson with this next pick. Two of the most consistent guys you can get at the position. Give me Tucker. A lot of good defenses here: the Eagles, the Ravens, the Patriots, the Bills. But somebody will fall out to us who has, upside potential for the year in terms of a defense, whether it's the Seattle Seahawks, the Jacksonville Jaguars, even the Saints, who, when you look within that division, have a really good schedule. The Broncos, who weren't a great fantasy defense last year, but were a good defense in general. There's going to be somebody here. And at the end of the day, we can just stream a defense, so who really cares? So nonetheless, we won't waste too much time. I'm just going to pick one defense, but we'll go ahead and we'll take a look at this team. I think that we ended up with a very good squad tonight. I'm happy with this team. Obviously, you guys can tell I don't put a ton of emphasis on the running back position. I kind of prefer that hero running back method and then just loading up at wide receiver, getting a good value quarterback, getting a good value tight end. I think we accomplished that today. So we'll take a look here. Trevor Lawrence would be our starting quarterback, obviously. David Njoku would be our starting tight end. We'd be starting Tony Pollard and Rachaad White, Isaiah Pacheco and Damian Harris on the bench as our two running backs that we could filter in at that RB2 spot. We'd be starting Jamar Chase and Chris Olave. Then when we look to that flex spot, Deebo Samuel, Christian Kirk, Zay Flowers, Sky Moore, four wide receivers on our bench, or between our bench and our flex spot, that we have confidence in. And then if anything goes really south, he can still flex a player like Isaiah Pacheco. We've got a stud kicker in Justin Tucker, and I think we're in a position to still get a pretty good value defense. So I'm happy with this roster. Can understand if you're not completely comfortable with a hero running back method, you might not be too confident in this roster, but I'm telling you guys, in full PPR formats, this roster would be completely okay. So happy with this team. We'll go ahead and we'll select a defense and we will wrap up the video for today. So like I said at the beginning of the video, please let me know if you guys have any mock draft requests. Don't care what the format is. Don't care what the scoring format is. we'll get it on the schedule and we'll get you guys a good quality mock draft, which you can, of course, join with us while we make the video as well. Make sure you guys join our Discord. The link is in the description down below. It's completely free to join. That is where you guys can find my mock draft invites, as well as a place for you guys to send out your own mock drafts where real competitive members of our fantasy community will draft with you guys literally any time of day. We have like 30 mock drafts a day that go out on there. So love to have you guys on there and as a part of our community. If you guys did enjoy today's video or find it helpful or want a future mock draft set up for you, be sure to hit that subscribe button on the way out. Hit the like button on the way out. If you guys have any other questions, comments, concerns pertaining to the 2023 fantasy football season, drop them in the comments down below. I'll get back to you as soon as I possibly can. With that, I will say, thank you guys so much for watching and or listening. And remember, you saw it here on The Catch.